Hi, everybody, and welcome to Beyond the Cage. I am your host, Jim Graham, and today on MMA World, we are once again streaming live, and this is the relaunch of my show here on MMA World, and I'm so proud to be partnering up with MMA World and MMA UK to bring you guys my brand of MMA thoughts, opinions, and analysis. So once again, my name is Jim Graham. I'm your host. I will be joined shortly by my co-host today, Kayla Beatty, and today we're going to discuss a whole bunch of stuff in about the next hour 15 minutes. I'm so excited to talk about all this stuff, and I'm so excited obviously to hear from you, the fans, the viewers, the listeners, whatever you want to call yourselves, commenting below, and we're definitely going to go back and forth with everybody that comments with any questions, comments, thoughts, all that stuff too. Obviously, as the description says, UFC 218 this weekend right here in my hometown, Detroit, Michigan, at the brand new, amazing Little Caesars Arena. I will be there in person to check out the fights, 13 fights on the night. Super excited that MMA, specifically the UFC, is returning to the great state of Michigan, so I'm excited for that. We're going to talk about the main card, touch a little bit on the undercard as well. Also, this past weekend, we had UFC Shanghai, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. And we're also going to talk a little bit, there's Glory 48 this weekend in New York. One of our representatives, Carrie Steller, she's going to be live in attendance for that one, covering that. We also have Bellator 189 this weekend. Julia Budd is set to defend her featherweight championship for Bellator. And just very excited for this night. And EBI 14's on Sunday. Gordon Ryan, arguably the best grappler in the world. He's coming up right now and just dominating everybody. I think he's only lost like one professional grappling match. So very excited to see him compete at EBI 14 this weekend, which is an absolute bracket. And it will be pretty awesome watching him compete. He's one of the guys that trains with Gary Tonin and Eddie Cummins, part of the Danaher Def Squad and all that as well. So now we're going to bring in my co-host, Caleb. All of this and maybe even more, including your comments here on MMA World. All right, how's it going this morning, Kayla?
Hey, good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Just to update everybody what we're going to talk about here this morning, afternoon, or evening if you're over in the UK. A lot of stuff to talk about, but what are just looking over, I think I sent you like a list of topics, but obviously I'm excited about UFC 218 just because it's right here in my hometown of Detroit, but what are some of the things you're interested to talk about here this morning?
Yeah, I didn't know that you were in Detroit. That's right. That's so exciting. So are you going to the event?
Absolutely. I got my tickets. I think they have like a Fight Club pre-sale, then like the newsletter pre-sale, then the general. I got mine on the newsletter pre-sale, so I got them like before really anyone got tickets.
Nice. Good seat.
Now some people are like, well, Jim, you're a media member. Why didn't you get a media pass? Well, being in my hometown, I have a lot of friends who like to attend, and if you get a media pass, you can't go with your friends.
That's
so
true.
I opted to go with my friends who all of them have never even been to a UFC fight. So
Oh
I kind of wanted to be there for experience. So
well,
yeah.
honestly, I've been so jealous. I co-host a radio show, and I've been so excited for this card, and I was hoping that it would be over here on the West Coast, but I'm really excited that you guys get such a big card, especially if your friends haven't even been to one before. They're going to love it.
Yeah, we're super excited. Obviously, not to take away from Jose Aldo, we're going to get to his fight against Max Holloway, but I was super excited to see Frankie Edgar against Max Holloway, the original attended main event. And while I'm not trying to say like, oh, it's now horrible that Jose Aldo's in or something, I'm not trying to make that case all, but we haven't seen that fight yet. And I think that's a fight a lot of people have been wanting to see. So it is unfortunate that we don't get to see that now. And hopefully down the road though, I mean, I don't know how serious a facial fracture is. I mean, it sounds really bad. Yeah. But it may be a quicker recovery than we think for Frankie Edgar. So hopefully, I wish him a speedy recovery. He's not going to be in Detroit. I saw he's already hosting a viewing party in New Jersey. So I was like, oh, maybe he'll be there, but he will not be there in attendance.
Yeah, no, I think we'll eventually get that fight for sure once he's healthy and recovered. But yeah, 218, I'm so excited. There's a lot of stuff going on this weekend. We also have the Tough finale. We have Bellator 189. I think there's a Combate Americas fight. There's so much going on. I don't know how I'm going to DVR and set everything.
Right. I was telling a friend, I was like, hey, I'm relaunching my show on Thursday, and they're like, oh, what are you going to talk about? I was like, too much. I mean, there's just so much going on. We're going to do our best to cover it and cover it in a timely manner. I guess really what I want to start off the show with before we get to 218 and any of the other events really going on is what's Conor McGregor up to? This has now kind of been an ongoing saga pretty much since this past weekend, and I feel like we have to cover it because it's now very intriguing. You have I think the first thing that happened was he got in a bar brawl, so that was the first thing, and someone's like, oh, check out, he beat up this dude. So we're like, all right, Conor just got drunk. He beat up some fan that was probably trying to prove that he could beat up Conor McGregor.
Right.
Didn't go well. Then we have Dana White at the Tough Finale press conference saying, well, you know, Conor just made over $100 million off his fight with Floyd Mayweather. I don't think he's ever going to fight again. So we have that. Now we have reports that the guy he beat up is a member of the Irish mob, and they have reportedly set a $900,000 bounty on the UFC champion's head.
I hadn't heard about that part, that bit of news yet.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true or not. That's a rumor. I'm just seeing things. I've seen headlines. It's probably clickbait, but this is a crazy series of events we've had in less than a week come up about this man, range from beating guys up to death threats to not even fighting again to he's like the richest fighter. Just so many things have gone on, and it's crazy. It's just so crazy. I mean, let's go to you. What are you kind of processing here with Conor McGregor after hearing all these things have happened within like 5 days?
Yeah. I mean, he usually does make some sort of press news bit at least like once a week or every other week. But there's been a lot going on. You know, I'm not going to lie. I'm pretty disappointed hearing Dana say that he doesn't know if he's going to fight anytime soon or ever again. I think that if they're having conversations with him, or if he's really sticking to that, deal that he said, I'll come back once you give me like a little portion of the company, or at least get involved more on the company side. I think if they're continuing to have those conversations, then they need to start having the conversation of taking away the belt. Because I love Conor McGregor. I love what he's done for MMA. I've always been a big fan, but it's not fair to have all of this talent just sitting on the bench waiting for him. It's frustrating.
Yeah, and that I think is the most frustrating for fans all about this. And I had, going into the Mayweather fight, I had a very big feeling that he may not ever fight mixed martial arts again. And that was really confounded with a guy fighting this weekend in Max Holloway was saying, you know, as much as I would like to get that rematch of Conor, a lot of people would like to get that chance at fighting him. He goes, when he's making these types of paydays, he goes, it's really hard to come back and make like 10% of that. You know, 5%. He goes, it's really hard. So he goes, I just think Conor is looking for bigger things right now, and that doesn't include the UFC. And he goes, there's nothing wrong with that. He goes, it just doesn't seem like he's going to be able to come back. And I think you add in also being a new father. I think that changes your whole perspective on things in life too. So there's a lot of things going on. Obviously, I really think if had he won the Mayweather fight, I for sure would have said with 100% on doubt he would never come back to MMA. But the fact he lost, I thought, all right, he lost. He kind of got humbled a bit, and now he can prove that he's the number one guy in his sport. Right. And I thought that may be the case. But now the more time has gone on, the more that they're like, he's not ready. The thing with the mob now, which is kind of just a crazy issue. I don't think that really will affect him fighting, but I am starting to get to the point where I don't think he's going to come back. And if it is, it's not going to be anytime soon. It's not going to be, I don't think he fights in 2018. I think there's a very good chance that he doesn't fight all next year.
So do you think that they'll strip him of the belt?
I think they'll have to. I think realistically, if they don't get an answer after the holiday, I think you give him Christmas, you give him New Year's, you come back, first week of January, second week of January, and go, Conor, you've been the champion in 2 divisions. One, we basically forced you to vacate because we knew you were never going to drop down to 145 again. And we already have an interim title in your division. We have guys lined up to fight you in almost every division. We need to know, because if you're going to come back in a year, 2 years, great. We're going to take you back because you're going to sell. But we need to know. Otherwise, if you don't give us an answer, we have to take away your belt. And as much as the UFC hasn't been hard with him, they're going to have to very soon. And this is not even including, I forgot, Kayla, about the Bellator incident
I know,
with referee Mark Goddard. That, forget about that too. So, you know what I mean? So they have to take a stand. They've let him have his fun, but now they have to come back to reality and tell him, like, look, we got to do something.
Yeah, and I think, he's accomplished so much already so young that it might not be a bad thing for him to take a little bit of a break. Maybe not a break to where, he completely goes off the map. He can still stay relevant in movies or what have you, other opportunities. But maybe it would be better for him, too, to take a little break and then come back, after some of his division gets figured out. Because like you said, I think unless he already has these big paydays. So unless there's a fight that really intrigues him, I don't see him coming back. I think that they're trying to lure him in with that St. Patty's Day fight or possibly a fight in Russia against Khabib. But, we don't know if those are going to play out. And then there's Tony Ferguson waiting around. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think there's, I hate to say 100% because nothing's ever 100%, but I would say there's probably like a 95% chance that he gets stripped of the belt and does not fight in 2018. I think that's a very good
stripped. Ugh.
Yeah, and I think as much as he is a guy that wants to prove his legacy and being the best, this definitely hurts it.
Yeah.
How can it not?
Yeah.
All right, let's get to UFC Shanghai real quick because just 4 fights were shown on the main card. That was this past weekend over in China. The first ever UFC fight on mainland China featured a main event of Michael Bisping and Kelvin Gastelum. Michael Bisping filling in for Anderson Silva, who once again gets flagged by USADA. I kind of want to start there a little bit. Speaking of careers being done or not fighting a while, do you feel as though, Kayla, that this second now offense by Anderson Silva, this is kind of the final nail in the career of the Spider?
Yeah, it's really just disappointing, I guess, because here's someone who's built this legacy, obviously going down where some people argue one of the greatest of all time. And what's unfortunate is depending on, his punishment with USADA, this could be the end of his career. He's either going to come back possibly, with a lot of time off, even older in the game, or, he's going to have to retire under these circumstances. And both are not a way that I wanted Anderson Silva to finish his career. What do you think?
Yeah, this is not the way I think myself and a lot of other people envisioning Anderson Silva going out. And I'm going to be honest, it's nothing against Kelvin Gastelum, but I think putting him on Fight Pass for what potentially would have been his last fight, I think was a big disservice, to be honest.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I love watching Fight Pass. I have a subscription. I love going on there. But I think for a guy that magnitude, when you really look at the situation, I think was a disservice. I really think he should have been put on he should have been put on pay-per-view or at very least FS1 prelims or something. Or I just think that situation wasn't handled great, first of all. And then when he gets flagged, I think he's 42 years old, right? 42, 43?
Yeah, he's definitely
he's
in
his
early
40s.
40s.
I know that 100%. And so you add in that his performances really since, I guess you can even really sense his leg injury. This is looking even going back to the Nick Diaz fight, which now seems like a lifetime ago, that Nick Diaz fight. He's just not the same guy. You can see flashes, and I think you saw that a lot in that Michael Bisping fight. You see flashes of brilliance. You see flash of the razzle-dazzle that he was able to bring to the table. But the speed isn't quite there. And so when the speed's not there, that's when the hits have come up. Hits he has never really had to take in his career. And now being older, he's not taking the hits as well. And you also look at his last fight against Derek Brunson. No offense to Derek Brunson, but this was a fight I would have said in, say, 2011, 2012, 2010, somewhere around there. If he would have matched up with someone like Derek Brunson, he would have mopped the floor with Derek Brunson.
Right.
And that's no offense to him. But it ends up being a close split decision that he probably should have lost. It's like years ago, it wasn't even a question that he beat a guy like Derek Brunson. Now it's like he's barely getting by these guys.
Yeah.
And yeah, Kevin Gastelum's a smaller guy, but I think Kevin Gastelum probably would have knocked him out. I think his speed would have been a lot for Anderson to deal with at this stage in his career, and I don't think he would have been able to combat it. I think that pop may have saved us from seeing Anderson lie down the canvas unconscious. I really do.
Yeah, no, I agree because Kelvin looked really good in that fight. I think, I mean, all of his performances, it seems like he's improving and showing us more, but I felt, especially the speed, like you're saying, he looked really good. And I think, like, you made a good point. Anderson is now suffering hits that he's never really had to suffer before, and you don't want to start testing your chin this late in the game. So, yeah, it's very unfortunate. Like you said, it probably saved him a nasty finish, but I don't know. I feel like neither are really great ways that we'd want to see Anderson Silva go out, but it's just disappointing because no one ever wants to have their legacy be tarnished with cheating.
Yeah, and now this has now come up twice with him.
Right.
And I guess the one saving grace of this situation, if there is any, is the fact that even though the testing wasn't as strenuous when he was champion, he never failed a test during his run. We've only seen the testing come after the major leg injury, in the Chris Weidman fight, and obviously with him getting older. Now, I would love to believe that Anderson Silva never took anything during his run. And as fans, that's what you want to believe. And you want to believe that he only was taking these substances because he's older. He's trying to overcome injuries. That's one of the benefits of taking steroids, is that you can overcome injuries a lot quicker. And so that's what we would like to think. It's just a guy that's aging, that was just trying to hold on and maybe knowingly took something he shouldn't have, thinking that if I could just get one more fight, if I could just one more good, that's what we like to think. But now, because of that, it kind of puts the whole thing into question. And we can't go back in time. We can't red test samples from 15 years ago or 10 years ago. We can't do anything like that. But it does start to kind of bring up, like, well, if he was using now, what's to say he wasn't using in 2008, in 2009?
Yeah. Yeah, no, like you said, I think USADA has come in and really, because it's still a new sport too. Obviously, we know back in the old days, they were a little bit more lenient with this type of stuff, and I think USADA, I don't want to say that it's coming in and starting to, I guess, clear out those people that might have been more reliant on supplements or different things, but they're definitely just so strict now that you can't get away with it. So it's kind of crazy to me that people even try to. I know that sometimes there are supplements and things that just get messed with out of their control, but if anyone is even trying to cheat or do stuff that they did back in the day, you're going to get caught now. I mean, with technology, with the way that USADA is being so strict and the way that the sport's growing, they have to be strict about it, and they have to make sure that the fighters are safe.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm not trying to say that USADA is bad for the sport. I do think it's great for the sport. Yeah, it sucks we didn't get to see Gastelum Silva or Silva versus these other fights and but at the end of the day, we want to make sure everyone is on the same page. Everyone's on the same level. And so I do think it's a good thing, even though sometimes it takes out fighters. We did the preview show for 217. I was all excited about Kuta Libre. Of what happens, he gets popped by USADA. So
yeah, I know. I thought about you when that happened. I was like, oh, man.
So it happens. But hopefully, Mr. Kuta Libre is okay. Maybe it was not something serious. I haven't heard any ruling on it yet. So it's just a lot of those times when it comes out and you hear the report, it says he's been flagged for a potential violation. So what they're saying is he may have violated, but they got to do further testing. So we'll see. I'm hopeful, but we'll see. Anyway, but speaking of the fights, I thought the fights were great for UFC Shanghai. I thought we saw a lot of great, incredible performances. Obviously, the Leech, the Leech looked really good. I was very impressed. That's one of the weirdest nicknames in the sport, but the Leech performed very well, and then Gastelum. All right, I want to get to this section of UFC Shanghai because we have so much to cover. Gastelum against Bisping. Did you like the fact that Bisping, just 2 weeks after getting beat, and not so much getting beat, but the fact that he took some hits, obviously choked out Kayla, that being Michael Bisping against GSP. Did you like the fact that 2 weeks they were kind of like, okay, let's throw him in there, and the UFC seemed to have no problems with it? Because I'm not saying Kevin Gastelum couldn't have beat Michael Bisping on a full camp, but you can't tell me fighting 2 weeks after a fight like that didn't affect Michael Bisping. You can't say it didn't.
And, all the stuff leading up to that fight with GSP, that was a big fight. It was GSP's comeback, a lot of press, media tour. So he had a lot of stuff going on leading up to that, of not having the, leisure of being at home as much, or even maybe, I don't even know if he was training somewhere separately. Like, he was doing a lot before that. So he really hadn't had time to even rest, mentally or physically. But it made me a fan of him even more. Um, I've always had like a love-hate relationship with Michael Bisping. I think he's a great fighter, but I don't always love his style of, trash talking, all of that. But the fact that he was willing to just go in and step up and kind of save the main event, and the way that he was addressing why he was doing it, and mentioning the idea of retiring, and how he'd like to just kind of go full force up until that UK card and try to take a few more fights and prove himself, or not prove himself, but just add to his legacy. It made me more of a fan of his. Do I feel kind of bad with the outcome of how he got that nasty finish? Yeah, I mean, it was hard to watch, but for some reason, even the way he handled himself, in the press conference after, it's the way that he's taking his losses so humbly, is making me a bigger fan of him. What do you think?
Yeah, and we also have a question we have from James Anthony. Should Bisping retire or have one more fight in London, and who should he fight? If he wants to retire, he wants to retire. He's a guy that's always been in pretty good shape physically, but again, he is 38 years old. He's been doing this sport a very long time, and before that, some boxing and kickboxing. So he's been involved in combat sports for about 20 years. He does have a family. He's made a pretty good amount of money in his career, and obviously he already has a gig being a Fox Sports analyst, so that's
Great.
steady income too. It's not like he doesn't have something to fall back on. Possibly he could even open his own gym or be a coach, which that's a revenue too. So he has options. He has stuff he can do, which is great. And I think I always put it this way: if you're already thinking about retirement, and if you're already putting that in people's minds, then you probably should, because your head's already 1 foot out the door, and this is the wrong sport to have 1 foot out the door in a retirement. Case in point, what happened just now against Calvin Gastelum.
Right.
So I think he should retire. For his last fight, I would really love to see that trilogy completed with Luke Rockhold. I know Luke Rockhold's very close to a cusp of a title shot, but when I look at great trilogies in the UFC, and I have one dedicated in my autograph room to Chuck and Randy, very rarely in a big trilogy do you see both guys have a finish. That doesn't happen too often in big-time UFC trilogies. So I would really like to see that resolved. And the fact that that's going to be an entertaining matchup. These two love to jaw at each other. They jawed at each other both times they fought. I think a third is going to be no different. And I think Luke Rockhold would relish beating Michael Bisping in his home country for that fight in March, too. He's the type of guy that I think thrives on those type of things. So that would be my pick. I don't know if that's what's going to happen, but that's what I personally would love to see.
Yeah, we'd have to look at scheduling, because I actually love that fight. I think that, like you said, we know we're going to get a good fight, a good build-up with the trilogy. And depending on who does win, it'd be a great win for him in his home country. If Luke was able to beat him, I think that would just kind of boost him up. Obviously, this division, has a lot going on. And I think that a final win against Michael, and especially his retirement fight, would just kind of get Luke, I guess, more in conversation again.
Yeah, and also the fact that he can kind of be the final nail in Michael Bisping's career, a guy that, took his championship away, another reason to do it. I mean, this is a guy that was trying to fight Fabricio Verdum at one point, so, Luke Rockhold. So I think fighting Michael Bisping, I think, would be something he would be willing to do. And scheduling-wise, it should work out. I just think he should get a big name. It shouldn't just be some young up-and-comer, somebody we don't know. Right. Maybe someone else kind of looking for out the door. Because I think it should be. I think it's going to be that one in London is a fight night, right? I don't think it's a pay-per-view.
Let me see if I can find the info on it. Really,
the only fight I heard rumored was that the Darren Till Wonder Boy was rumored, and that could also obviously be a main event too. But as far as I know, it wasn't a pay-per-view. So, Luke Rockhold versus Bisping 3 is a great main event for whether it's a Fight Pass card or a FS1 card.
Yeah, and I think you're correct, because I remember someone was talking to me about which one they think Conor could end up on. And I think because, like you said, it's not a pay-per-view, they threw that out the door for Conor.
Yeah, yep. It really, the card, I think that would have done well, and he has fought there several times, but obviously it doesn't look like it's going to happen. They just announced Daniel Cormier against Volkan Ozdemir for January in Boston. Obviously, with a lot of people of Irish descent in Boston, that would have been a perfect card for him to come back to, and he's done well fighting in Boston, but obviously doesn't look like that's going to happen. All right, let's see what we got up here next. We talked about UFC Shanghai. Let's get to the Ultimate Fighter 26 here. The last episode of the season was last night, which saw another upset as Sijara Eubanks was able to take out number 1 seed Roxanne Modafferi by unanimous decision. And watching that fight, the one thing I thought that would be the difference would be the stand-up. I thought Sijara would definitely have the better power of the two, and I thought that would be the difference. But really, how the fight played out, Sijara ended up proving that she was the better grappler, which I did not see coming. Roxanne they're both black belts, so I'm not trying to make it sound like Roxanne's bad or anything. But coming into that fight, you had to believe that Roxanne had the better grappling and was going to be able to handle those situations, even though Sijara is a black belt in jiu-jitsu as well. But Sijara took the fight right to her. When she saw opportunities to strike, she struck. Roxanne had a couple of rolls for arm bars, but none of them were really close.
Right.
It just didn't really seem like she was able to get herself out of those positions quickly enough or really threaten Sijara with any submissions or damage. And on the feet, especially after the first round, I think she was so worried about that top pressure and strength that her striking just wasn't there that we had seen previously on this competition. And so I think Sijara just really took the confidence out of Roxanne very quickly and didn't allow her to really recover or even get any sort of momentum to try to get this fight back. And for a girl that was ranked, number 12 in this competition, I think that's a huge accomplishment. Also, the fact that she probably had the most difficult weight cutting process of anybody in the house, and the fact she did it 3 times in 6 weeks doesn't help either. But I just thought this was a really complete performance by Sijara Eubanks.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I'm not really sure which moment, but there was definitely a moment in that first round that, like you said, she just really rocked and frustrated Roxanne. And I think in the after the second, or maybe right after the first, you could even see her frustration in the corner. I think she even tells Justin, like, don't lie to me. She was definitely, there was just something off, and something probably like you're saying with Sarge's power, maybe mixing it up with the ground game that just kind of shook Roxanne, and I think she was able to dominate. But it still went 3 rounds. I mean, both girls still performed really well, but it was very interesting to see someone ranked so low completely just like rock and frustrate Roxanne, who was the favorite. But that's why I love the show, is it's so great. Like Dana says too, sometimes the rankings, they don't mean anything. These girls can come in and they're in such an interesting scenario too with the house. But I loved the season. I thought it was so great to see all of these ladies who have already kind of been competing, just not on a UFC platform, go in there and perform. I like that a lot of them are going to be on the finale card, because I mean, don't you think they're not most of them, but I could see a good chunk of them being signed to the division just to start filling it up. We saw.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think it'll be all 16 girls that were featured on the show, but I would say I'm thinking possibly like 10 to 12 probably get signed.
Yeah.
There are already a lot of girls that have already fought at flyweight in the UFC that I think would quickly make the jump to the division. Chief among them, Jessica Ai, who before signing with the UFC was the number 1 ranked female flyweight in the world. She's going to be making her flyweight UFC debut in her next fight coming up in St. Louis. So obviously that's someone that's going to be a major player in the division. Also, Paige Van Zandt has talked about fighting at 125. I think it was 2 weeks ago in Australia, you saw Beck Rawlings take on Jessie Jess. That fight was at 125, so those are 2 ladies that factor in as well. So I think we're going to see, even Joanna herself has talked about fighting at 125. Claudia Gadelia could be an option as well. So I think they're going to have and obviously they signed one of my favorite fighters to watch, Andrea KGB Lee,
Mm.
who's a flyweight fighter as well. So they're going to have a lot of talent like instantly in this division. And my thing was just, why did it take so long? Because you make 35, okay, you got to make one first, right? Then you make 115. It was just natural that girls were either going to be too big for 115 or too small for 135.
Right.
And naturally, just all that was going to go into the middle. And I think because of that, we may end up seeing the best division, because we're going to get kind of all those girls that were kind of in between now fighting at what they truly should be at. I think we're going to actually see a really good division.
It gets me so excited. I'm already predicting 2018. I think the ladies, not that there's not a lot of upcoming new people starting to become stars within just the UFC or MMA, but I really think that next year is going to be for the ladies. Bellator has a stacked new division too. It's going to be so awesome, like you said, just to see these ladies fight in their natural way, that they're feeling good and can perform their best. And there's just so many different matchups to put in there. It's exciting.
All right, before we get talking about the championship fight and some of the ladies, we got a couple of questions. James Anthony responded saying rumors are Lyoto Machida or Vitor Belfort. As far as I know, Vitor Belfort was supposed to fight at the fight night in St. Louis. So I don't know. That's that one in London I confirmed is March 17th, and it is going to be an FS1 fight night card. So unless Vitor does what Vitor does and gets out under a minute, then yeah, maybe he'll be eligible. But there's a good chance that Vitor might not be ready, and I would love to see that. I think that would be a great rematch as well. Lyoto Machida, I don't know. I'm not saying it'd be a horrible fight, but I don't know. I think his style sometimes can make, and Bisping's kind of a counter guy too. I actually don't think that would be that great of a fight. Someone brought up Romero. I don't think Bisping wants to fight Yoel Romero.
He's going to try and dodge.
We all dodged.
Yeah.
We all know he dodged him. He want none of that, man. And I don't blame him. But for his last fight, he ain't taking a fight that he doesn't want.
After 2 losses,
you don't want Romero. You don't want that one. And that was Anthony Hines. Thanks for the comment, Anthony. And we have Joe Barton. Should cheats be banned for life? I don't think you should be banned for life on your first offense. I think that would maybe be a second or third. You got to give people a chance, because like you were saying, Kayla, sometimes legitimately your doctors or your physicians or trainers, they don't look at the list. A lot of these fighters, they have a lot of stuff done for them. So when you expect your manager, coaches, and trainers to look over the list of banned substances and they don't, or they overlook something, they go, oh, this is okay, I checked. They give you something, you use it, and then you get popped for it. Yeah, it's still kind of your fault because you should have double checked, but at the same time, it was an accident. You weren't trying to skirt the rules. So that's why you can't just ban people, like that off their first offense. You got to, if someone, first offense, you kind of go, all right, we'll give you a couple months. Second one, you kind of start going, all right,
let me look
starting to look bad. But by the third, you're kind of like, all right, 3 strikes, you're out, right? I know that's a different sport, but that's kind of how I would put it. Because you got to, everyone's human, everyone makes mistakes, and you can't just, basically end someone's career for a mistake. But by 3 times, it's not a mistake anymore.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think, like you said, the first time, even second time, something fishy, something else could have happened there. And like you said, you put a lot of trust in your team too. The fighters have a lot going on and what they have to focus on. That's why they have their team and their managers and there to help them out with that stuff. But yeah, there's plenty of fighters that have nice long careers with never having one, mark on their record. So by 3 times, I don't know. I think you got to figure something out and maybe get into a different sport if you can't rely on just your talents alone and a work ethic.
Absolutely. All right, let's get back to the tough finale here. A couple of fights I want to highlight. I'm excited to see Jillian Robertson against Emily Whitmire. That's the only fight on Fight Pass. Jillian is currently a purple belt in jiu-jitsu and is a guy who has just started training jiu-jitsu. I'm very intrigued by someone that is primarily a jiu-jitsu player. And Emily Whitmire officially, at least according to MMA Junkie, I think they probably haven't updated it. So I think she has a very similar record. Robertson listed at 3-2. I thought she had a similar record. So I'm excited to see those 2 ladies compete. As far as the FS1 prelims, I have to say Ryan James against Andrew Sanchez. The reason is because the last fight Ryan James competed at, they mentioned that he's a really big fan of board games and he plays a lot of board games. I myself play a lot of board games. I'm a huge fan. So instantly I was like, oh, this guy's like the coolest guy ever.
Right.
He plays board games and he's a UFC fighter. He didn't win his last fight, so I'm very hopeful. And Andrew Sanchez is a tough competitor, so he has his work cut out for him. But I'm excited to see that just for that because I'm a fan of him as a person. Those are the two prelim fights I'm excited for. What about you, Kayla?
Don't they say MMA is almost like human chess, right? You're trying to
Yeah.
Yeah. So if he's good at board games, good at chess, he's probably a great mixed martial artist. But yeah, no, that fight too. I'm a big fan of Andrew Sanchez. Karine, I love that Karine and Rachel are going to be matched together. I really enjoyed both of their performances during the show. Just their background too, their stories. That one gets me pretty excited. Let me see here. Yeah, I love that Montana is fighting, Shanna, Ariel. I mean, there was just so many great performances, and like we said, just girls that deserve to be in the decisions or in the division. So I'm just excited that they're going to be on this card and getting a chance to be a part of the finale. Let's talk. Well, I mean, before, unless you want to talk about something else, but I definitely want your take on the main event.
Yeah, I was gonna get that real quick, but I said I'm also excited for the main card, Barb Harnchak versus Roxanne Modafferi.
Yeah.
This is a fight that had been for years in Invicta, while Barb Harnchak was the 125 Invicta champion. But of course, she kind of took some time away, and that fight never materialized. So I'm glad we're finally able to see that fight. I'm actually super excited to see Roxanne against Barb. I think you have a very good wrestler in Barb Harnchak, and obviously a very good jiu-jitsu player in Roxanne Modafferi. So I think we're going to see a really nice grappling battle. I think that's going to be a highly entertaining fight between those two ladies. And really the winner puts themselves in a very good position to potentially be the first one to challenge for the title after the main event. But looking at the main event, they kind of said it there, but probably two women that nobody had fighting for the title. I think that's safe to say, especially Nico, because at least in Sajara's case, she had fought a couple times for Invicta. People kind of may had known her before, training with Lloyd Irvin and stuff. So I'm not saying she was like a huge name, but at least you can kind of go, all right, I can kind of. But with Nico, she completely came out of nowhere. Nobody expected this from this girl. And the reason I think she has a huge chance to win this fight, and she's my pick, her takedown defense she took on arguably the three best grapplers in this bracket. Taking on Montana, taking on Barb Harnchak, and taking on Laura Murphy, who I think is an absolute beast, especially at 125. And she was able to shut all of them down.
Yeah.
And use superior stand-up. And it's just, man, looking at that, yeah, you can maybe say Sajara's maybe a little better stand-up than those. But in a pure stand-up match, I think you got to take Nico, though. I think overall skill, she has it there. You add in her takedown defense. That takedown defense, I think, is just going to be so key, and she just has seemed to gravitate towards that and really make that an area she's very strong at. And I think that's the X factor for that fight, and I think that's going to continue. And I just think that she's on the roll. I really do, and that's why I'm picking her to win. Obviously, Sajara has maybe a little better power, but I just think that the stuffing of the takedowns, I think, may wear on Sajara, and that's only going to build more confidence for Nico heading into what, remember, is a 25-minute fight.
Right.
So I think the longer she can stave off the takedowns, that's the more it kind of gets in your head that something's not working right, and that can play right into Nico, who has seemed to take advantage of those opportunities so far on the fights inside the house.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, this 25-minute fight too, I think will really come into play because Nico is just so durable. I think she had mentioned too, I forgot how many miles she runs a day, but her cardio's through the roof. Like you said, her takedown defense. I think really the only thing that Sajara might have is that power if she catches her with some power shots. But there's a reason why Justin already said Nico is going to be champion. Like you said, I mean, both ladies have taken out some top fighters. I think in this last night, Sajara goes over to Dana and says, "I took out your number 1, your number 5." Like, remember she was yelling at him from the octagon?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I just think that Nico, I mean, right when you said that, who were her opponents? Barb, Montana, and who was her first fight?
Lauren Murphy.
Laura Murphy, yeah. I mean, just those names alone, people who have been dominating in this division pre-UFC, I can't see her not becoming champion. But I think, like you said too, I want to mention that I really think a lot of people thought Barb and Roxanne were going to be the ones that end up being at this finale. So
That's what
definitely,
I had.
yeah, I think a lot of people did. So it's going to be really exciting for those two fights because I think, like you said, depending on who wins, whoever is the winner of Barb and Roxanne is probably going to get that next shot. If someone like Paige or somebody doesn't use politics to come into play and get that shot.
Right. Absolutely. We have a question from Peter. What has been your favorite fight so far for 2017? I had to think for a second, and it might actually be eclipsed by his fight this weekend, but Justin Gaethje against Michael Johnson, I think, is it for me.
Yeah, that was a very
that's the tops.
I love to. I love that he's come in. I mean, obviously, people who watch MMA have known about him for a while. But I love that he came in and just gave us one fight and immediately got a shot on the show to be a coach and just became a huge star and fan favorite. I mean, there's a reason why people love him. He's so entertaining to watch.
And it's funny because this is one of the few seasons of The Ultimate Fighter where there was like virtually zero trash talk between the two coaches, and they kind of get a little talking head at the end, and you see Eddie Alvarez kind of go. He goes, I can't even trash talk the guy. He goes, he fights how you would want someone to fight. He goes, he's awesome. He goes, but, I'm going to have to take him out. And so I think that just captures in a nutshell what Justin Gaethje is that the way he fights the way fighters want to fight. He fights the way fans want fighters to fight. And he's a hard guy not to root for. And the thing is, he's been successful. He's 19-0 with 15 knockouts. You can't knock the guy's success. He's been able to beat everybody that's been put in front of him. And a lot of people thought, well, he was doing it against World Series of Fighting guys. And the thing was, yeah, he was. But the way I was looking at it is like, this guy's not just beating mediocre competition. He's demolishing mediocre competition. And that was the difference. He wasn't just skating by. And I knew when and if he would get to the UFC, he would be a championship contender. I hate to say like I called it before anybody because I don't think that's true. But I found out very on that this kid had the potential to be a UFC champion. And every once in a while, I'll see someone that starts young and kind of moves up for the sport. And I'm like, I think this kid has championship potential. One of the first guys I ever saw that was Anthony Rumble Johnson. As far as being a young guy, I saw that this guy could be a champion. I've seen it a couple times throughout the years. Some of those guys have fizzled out. I haven't always been right. It's so hard to predict. But Justin Gaethje was the guy I saw immediately in World Series and Fighting and go, this guy could be a UFC champion. And beating Eddie Alvarez, a former champion, puts him on a very short list of competing for that championship very soon and possibly as early as sometime next year.
And you get to see him perform live. This is so exciting.
I'm super excited. I've been wanting to see him perform live for a very long time, and finally getting that chance to do it. I'm super excited, and really super excited that they even kind of split it up, because typically if it was a regular season of The Ultimate Fighter and wasn't for a championship, they would be the main event on Friday night. And also the fact that typically, even if there was a pay-per-view, it would also be in Las Vegas. But for some reason, they put the event here in Detroit, which I'm grateful for, don't get me wrong, but they're like, oh, they don't need to be in Vegas for the finale. They could be in a different city, 3 time zones away. That's no problem. So that was a little interesting, too, that we were even able to get this fight here for 218. But nevertheless, I'm super excited for it.
Yeah, well, to finish that question, too, I mean, I think we discussed it, predicting before the fight happened, and then obviously people have talked about it a bunch. But my favorite fight so far, even though there's been great performances, standout stars coming out, GSP got me into the sport. Just seeing him come back and accomplish what he did was so incredible. It'll be interesting to see if he, how long he stays in that division and reigns as champion, but it just, to me, got me excited about the sport again, to see him back and then actually get the belt and win in the fashion that he did.
Absolutely. That was absolutely a great fight, too. And I think both of them probably are contenders for fight of the year, to be Real quickly, let's get to Bellator 189. It's kind of lost in the shuffle, I think, with so many things going on here this weekend, and it's not an overly huge card for Bellator, even though there is a championship fight. We get to see Julia Budd defend her title for the first time against Arlene Blenko. That's going to be the main event, again at 145 pounds. We also have the Bellator debut of Sam Sicilia, obviously a guy that used to fight in the UFC. He's now taking on Marcus Galvo. I believe that's going to be at 145 pounds. I don't think Sam could cut to 135, so I think that's 145. Also, two fighters I think are going to factor in for their 145 women's championship. Alex Dufresne will take on Amber Liebrock. I think that's an incredible matchup. And then a guy, speaking of young talent, that could potentially be on that Justin Gaethje path, Adam Piccolotti, 9-0, takes on the longtime veteran David Rickles. I think that's going to be a fantastic fight. And while, this is not the greatest Bellator card out there, I think this has a chance to kind of be one of those under-the-radar cards that could maybe steal the show for the weekend as far as quality of fights.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, one, with the main event too, there's some history there. The ladies are going to be competing in a rematch and for that title. That kind of adds a little bit of fire under Blenko's, but to go ahead and avenge her loss and then get that title. But I think, like you said, there's a few sleepers on there that it will be interesting and nice matchups too. I know, what was one of the ones that I was reading about that people were pretty excited? I want to say it was Lovato and Honeycutt.
Yeah, and then I forgot to mention the guy who's knocked out my favorite kickboxer, Joe Schilling, or one of my favorite kickboxers, Joe Schilling, twice. Hisadi Kato takes on Chidi Njokuani. And that one should be fireworks too.
So, like we said, it's going to be so hard to set the DVR, I guess, and just catch up with all these fights. I feel like after work, I'm just going to have to hunker down, and it's going to be MMA for probably 48 hours. But I'm so excited that there's sleepers on this card. I think that there's really important matchups too that are just going to kind of figure out people's placements within the division.
All right, let's move along. Let's get to talk a little bit about Glory 48. I know it's kickboxing, but if you haven't watched Glory Kickboxing, I don't know what you're doing. And also one of our colleagues, Carrie Steller, will be there covering ringside there at the Madison Square Garden Theater this Friday. So super excited for that. We're going to see a middleweight tournament. Mike Lemire is one of the head names, Rob Thomas, Wayne Barrett, and a newcomer, Baker. We have an interim featherweight title fight, Kevin Van Nostrand. Oh, man, Kevin Van Nostrand, this guy is just, I hate to say this term, but balls to the wall. This guy he doesn't stop. He very much epitomizes the Dutch style of kickboxing, really moving forward. He's super exciting. So I think if there's no other reason to watch for this guy in the main event. I got to see him compete in person at one of the Glory Chicago events against one of the best in the world, and Giga Chikazi, and he went toe-to-toe with Chikazi, who I think is one of the best in the world, and didn't win, but it was his first big-time fight, and I thought really proved himself as one of the top fighters in the world. So very excited to see him compete again. And then looking at the undercard, we got former UFC fighter Chris Camozzi makes his kickboxing debut on the Super Fight series. So that should be super intriguing. He said, I'm done with that grappling. I'm just going to do striking. Probably had a lot to do with the fact one of his teammates and Dustin Jacoby obviously already kickboxes for Glory, used to do MMA, now just does kickboxing. And he probably just like, man, if I don't got to worry about grappling, like, and I can still get paid all right, like, I'm going to do that. So he's going to be on the Super Fight series, which is on Fight Pass. And of course, the Super Fight series is headlined by one of the best fighters in the world, pound for pound, and Tiffany Van Soest, a.k.a. Tiffany Time Bomb. She has garnered a lot of attention, obviously, for doing kickboxing, doing MMA as well. Now doing this, this will be her second title defense. I got to see her first title defense back this summer in Chicago. Absolutely dominated, got the knockout victory, and I expect that once again. I just think that her speed, her timing, and her power. She doesn't look like she'd be that powerful of a woman, especially when I think it's 123 pounds or something. But she brings the power, and I think that's going to be a big difference. And no offense to her opponent and Mexon, who I think is talented, but I think Tiffany's at another level, and I think it's going to prove it on Friday night.
Yeah, I was going to say, so I haven't watched as much Glory as I'd like to. I've only caught a couple of events, and I know that there was one here in LA, and I went to go see it, but I couldn't get off work in time. So, but just hearing you talk about these fights, especially, it gets me super excited. You said the main event is the guy that goes balls to the walls.
Yeah, that's that's not a technical term. That's not a great breakdown, but they divide it up in like undercard, main card. So that's like the ESPN main card on ESPN 3, which is the streaming platform. That's what it shows live on, and then they replay it typically on Sunday night on ESPN 2, and usually it stays for about 3 or 4 days on the ESPN 3 site or app. So even if you miss it live, you can typically go back and watch it. And then the Super Fight series, that's on Fight Pass. Obviously, it doesn't go anywhere, so you can watch that once it does live. You can watch that anytime on Fight Pass, and that's what Tiffany Van Sus is headlining.
Very excited for her. Yeah, I've watched a few of her fights, and like you said, she's just so powerful and someone who's just I think gonna stay dominant and reigning for a while.
And I think it's good for Glory to have these other stars, because obviously the big fight with Rico Verhoeven and Jamal Ben Sadiq is coming up. They're putting that on pay-per-view again, which I think is a tremendous fight. But I think Glory, other than Rico, a lot of people are like, well, what else is there for Glory? What other stars? Well, here's your chance. You get to see Tiffany Van Sus, and possibly, Chris Camozzi could end up being a big star for them too.
Cool.
So I think there's a lot of great stuff to watch. And if you've never watched kickboxing before, I think this is the perfect card to get into it. It's just so exciting. And it's as much as I love MMA, kickboxing is great too. It's a nice change of pace sometimes, because you see fights, Kayla, over the years, and you see, man, if he could have just been able to stand with the guy.
Right.
Well, here's the people's chance that have ever said that in the fight. Here's your chance. You get to see guys just stand and throw kicks and punches and knees. So it's a nice change of pace. As much as obviously I'm trained jiu-jitsu, so I love the ground game, but it's a nice change of pace. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm excited.
All right, speaking of
this one.
All right, speaking of grappling, we can't not talk about this real quickly, because it's such a big event, and I think is starting to garner a lot of attention, from a lot of people, and that's EBI 14, the Eddie Bravo Invitational, the 14th installment, and I think only the second time they've been outside of Los Angeles. They're going to do this at the big Onnit facility there in Austin, Texas. And Onnit themselves is even holding an event. I think it's called like the Onnit Invitational 6 on Saturday, the day before. So if you're in the Austin area and you love grappling, you're going to have an awesome weekend to watch some incredible grappling events. And they put together some really good names for that Onnit 6. I saw the lineup. I'm going to have to look it up real quick, but
let us know who you're excited
it was fantastic. About. But yeah, and the EBI 14 though is obviously headlined by Gordon Ryan, arguably the greatest pure grappler in the world right now, reigning ADCC champion. He's a 2-time Eddie Bravo Invitational champion, and as far as I know, has only lost one professional grappling match since becoming a black belt. And he's also the first black belt under, arguably, you can make a case, it could be his coach is the greatest grappler, or however you want to say that. He's the first black belt under the Lion Killer, Gary Tonin. He's part of that Death Squad out there in New York and Jersey with Ricardo Almeida, Renzo Gracie, Tom DeBlass, all that stuff. And obviously he's the guy headlining it. 16-man tournament with some this is the absolute, so there's no weight. It's just whatever they weigh in, that's what they compete at. 16-man tournament. It's going to be on UFC Fight Pass starting Sunday night. I'm super excited for this, and this kind of reminds me to kind of go off another sport. Back when Tiger Woods was in his prime, a lot of the pick was, do you pick Tiger Woods or do you pick the rest of the field?
Yeah.
And as much as there's a couple guys in here I think maybe could take out Gordon Ryan, but now the more I'm thinking about it and talking about it, I got to pick Gordon Ryan over the field. I just think he's been that good. He's just been so dominant. He's also coming a win off of Helic Gracie over in Metamoris. Just a week or two ago. I just think that his game with the Danaher Death Squad, the no-gi, the submission, they just have taken that style of the sport, I think, by storm. And I'm not sure if anybody has caught up yet. And I'm not sure if right now is the time that Gordon Ryan's going to get derailed. I think that's the pick. I don't know if you could bet on this in Vegas or wherever, but if you do, I try to put my money on Gordon Ryan.
Jim's giving you a little tip here. Yeah. It's so exciting when there are breakout stars like that, where you just are going to see someone dominate for a while, like a Joanna. So that's exciting that tournament has that too.
Yeah, and the thing about Gordon Ryan is, the reason I would say to watch is because he's been quoted several times saying, he didn't set out to be the best grappler in the world. He goes, he is already thinking about mixed martial arts.
Oh, cool. That's exciting.
He's only 21 years old. He's a black belt. This is a guy that actually dropped out of high school to pursue jiu-jitsu.
I love.
So this is a very young guy. Yeah, so he still has a chance to do MMA. Obviously, Gary Tonin just signed a contract to do MMA with ONE FC, obviously his coach and mentor. So that's already got to be in his head, and it's looking to, that's going to be the way. And also, just for a money thing, you're going to make more money fighting in MMA than on the professional BJJ circuit. I mean, that's just that's just how that works. I'm trying to look up that On It Invitational lineup here. Real quick for anyone that's interested. Again, that's the day before, and Onnit's actually going to stream it for free on their website the day before. That's this Saturday. Oh, so yeah, here's the lineup. Michael Chiesa against David Rickles, Kyle Kingsbury against Patrick Miller, Danny Castillo against Jamie Varner, Marvin Castile against Dennis Bombro, Jacob Harris against Brandon Gutierrez, and Refugo Salado against Jake Langtais. So obviously a lot of guys that have fought in Bellator and UFC, so I think that's another intriguing event to watch. That's it kind of takes place at the same time as UFC 218, so maybe you won't get a chance to see it till afterwards. But if you want to switch streams or have multiple screens, that will be going on as well on Saturday night.
So much going on. It's so exciting, but almost stressful too. How are we going to catch everything? But luckily, there's ways to find it later.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think On It might keep it on their website or put it on YouTube.
I feel like they probably will, yeah.
Like that. So you'll have to check that, but I know at least they're going to do a live stream of it for free. It's not like on Flow Combat for money or anything like that. So, all right, we got 15 minutes left. We finally got to UFC 218. We're going to pick the main card fights, as I said. But before we get to that, just real quickly, we had one of our colleagues, Miles Painter, do an incredible write-up of Jakar Close, doing a big profile on Jakar. And one of the reasons he kind of asked me, he goes, what things can I talk about and help you out? I go, well, Jakar, because Jakar is a Detroit guy. He's fighting here in Detroit, I think for the first time in a very long time. And he gets a chance to take on one of the other best up-and-comers in the world, and David Tamar, who's coming off a big victory over Lando Venata in his last fight. They're going to be on FS1 for everybody to see. It's 8-0-1 for Jakar, 6-1 for David Tamar. Both guys, I think, are very talented. I think both guys are looking for a signature win to kind of prove, are they legit? And I think a win by either, I think, proves that they're for real.
No, I completely agree. I mean, this card has so much fireworks on it, but that's going to be one of the fights too, like you said, in the prelims. I think that's just going to get everyone excited and get the night started. I didn't know that he was the hometown Detroit guy too.
Yeah, and if anyone wasn't sure, if you go to his picture on UFC.com, he actually has the state of Michigan tattooed right there on his chest, just in case they weren't sure. he made that leap. Even has the Upper Peninsula on there too, so which is pretty cool. Also, speaking of Michigan, I have to mention Sabad Hamasi, who's originally from Dearborn, now trains down in Florida. He's going to be taking Abdul Rak Al-Hazan on the Fight Pass portion of the prelims. And then, of course, another Michigan fighter is highlighting the Fight Pass portion of the card, and Amanda Bobby Cooper. She is taking on Angela Magana. Looking at this fight, as much as I really want to be like, oh, it's a fight, anyone has a chance, but honestly, this is a fight. I think this is kind of a do or die fight for Amanda Cooper. If she loses this fight, she's 1-3 in the UFC, and this loss would have been to a girl who hasn't fought in almost 2 years, a girl that I really don't think is honestly really that good. I'm not trying to be mean to Angela Magana. I just don't think she's really that talented of a fighter. I mean, she's 11-8 in her career. I don't think she had that strong of a showing on The Ultimate Fighter. She got absolutely mollywopped by Michelle Watterson in her first fight post-Tough. She's been on a long layoff. Excuse me. I just think this, it's in Cooper's hometown. I just think so many things are riding for Amanda Cooper. There's so many good things, positives for advantages in the fight that if she can't get it done, I'm not sure if she can stick around.
Yeah, I agree, and especially too with all of the stuff that Magano does outside of fighting, all of the talking, all of the fights with Chris Cyborg that she's doing. It does seem that maybe her heart isn't in the sport as much. And I mean, I don't know her, so I don't know why she fights. But like you said, because she hasn't been as active um, with her record, I just see that we saw Amanda Cooper on the show. We've seen her in her past fights. It definitely seems like she wants to do well. She's just kind of been, unlucky and had certain opponents come in and that are just on a better momentum. But I think, like you're saying, she has more. I just benefits on her side to get this win, and I think that, like you said, it's a do or die. If she has another loss, that's usually when people start talking about whether or not you're going to stay.
And I think for Pagania, same thing too. I think if she loses, she's gone as well. I really think it's kind of a do or die for both women, but I think more so for Amanda Cooper just because she is, the hometown fighter in this matchup. All right, let's get to the main card here. Speaking of the strawweight division, two of the best in the strawweight division finally going to battle it out. Tecia Torres against Michelle Waterson. This fight, I think, was supposed to happen last September in Germany, which I think ended up being Gustafsson against Blachowicz. Or I think Josh Barnett or Orlovsky was the main event. So one of those fights. Anyways, both of them were on there. That was supposed to be happening there. Michelle Waterson obviously had an injury. She eventually went on to fight Rose Namajunas. Didn't win that fight. Tecia Torres has bounced back from her loss to Rose and is able to win, I think, 2 in a row, including her first ever professional finish. Can you believe that she made it now almost 10 professional fights without getting a finish? So I think that was a really big deal. And that was her last fight against Juliana Lima, who is a solid competitor in his own right, and she also beat Beck Rawlings as well. And right now, I would say she has the momentum. The fact she's been the more active fighter, she's coming off her first finish. Tecia Torres definitely has the momentum on her side. But Michelle Waterson is one of those fighters where I think she's just so well-rounded. I think because of the nickname, people always just focus on the stand-up. But I think realistically, she's probably a better grappler than she is a stand-up fighting. And I think that's going to be the big X factor because even though Tecia does have good takedown defense, I wouldn't really call her a great grappler, wouldn't really call her a great jiu-jitsu player. She really uses her speed and footwork in her stand-up to kind of throw people off and get away and move out a lot of those takedown positions. But I think Waterson's actually going to be able to match that. I think she's going to be one of the few fighters that can match that because she used to fight at 105. She's used to taking on women that can move really fast. And I think as opposed to a lot of other fighters in this division, I think Michelle Waterson will be really equipped to counter that great hand speed and footwork of Tecia Torres.
Yeah, I agree, and I think Tecia was building herself throughout the rankings not only because she was getting these wins in and, like you said, improving with each fight, getting her first finish, but she had also been, I think, the only girl in the top 5 that hadn't faced Joanna. So I think that's why she was also getting this, momentum of getting close to that title shot because it was a fight we hadn't seen. Obviously, Rose came in an upset, with the title, but I think that now Michelle just probably has even more momentum to try and get that rematch and get a shot at that title. Obviously, if she has a big win on this big card, it gives her more opportunity to kind of fight for that and really talk up that fight in that rematch. But I think, like you're saying, she has the experience, just with more time in the octagon, but also too, I think like you said, just with that experience, she's a little bit more well-rounded. Not that Tecia Torres isn't showing, great potential there, but I think that the experience and then momentum of wanting to avenge that loss against Rose is probably going to get Michelle the win.
Let's move on we'll do our picks at the end. We're going to move on to Alvarez and Justin Gaethje. We already talked about this a little bit. Really, to me, the biggest X factor is wrestling. I think Eddie Alvarez is an okay wrestler. I think he has okay takedown defense. I don't think he's fantastic at it. I think he's decent at it. But I think Justin Gaethje is the better wrestler. Power-wise, I think it's flipping a coin, to be honest. I think they both throw tremendously hard. I really think, though, it's going to come down to who can take the hits better.
Yeah.
I really think that's what it come down to is who can kind of last longer taking bombs from each other. And so far in 18 fights, it's been Justin Gaethje. So
That's what I was going to ask you. So you've been watching.
That's the X factor. Is
So
Gaethje has been able to take the blows. Alvarez has obviously already been knocked out several times in his career, most notably for the championship there against Conor. So I think as far as taking thick, I think Eddie Alvarez is going to have to be more worried about that than Justin Gaethje.
Yeah, I was going to say, because for someone that you said you've watched Justin Gaethje most of his career, if not all of his career, so he has taken a lot of damage and has a tough chin, right?
Yo, absolutely.
I
mean, you look at both Louis Palomino fights, wars. He's definitely going to get hit. That's a fact.
Do you think that they're going to, because you're saying, maybe Justin might fall back on the wrestling and how he's a little bit more superior there. But we also know that a lot of us are wanting to see them just stand up and bang. They know that the fans want to see that. They kind of both have been hinting at it too, that it's going to be a war. But they also both know they need to get that win. Do you think that Justin will go into the wrestling too soon, or do you think they're at least going to give us a round or two of standing and banging?
I think Justin will only go to it if he sees an absolute, like, if I change levels here, I'm going to hit it. But I don't think he's going to over pursue it because I think he feels confident in his stand-up abilities. I think he's going to stay there. I'm actually thinking if anyone's going to do it, it's going to be Eddie Alvarez.
Okay.
We saw it against Anthony Pettis. We thought, that's going to be a great striking battle, right? When he was matched up against Anthony Pettis.
Right.
What did he do? He held Anthony Pettis' back up against the cage in a double leg for 15 minutes. So I think if anyone's going to try to make this a wrestling matchup, it's going to be Eddie Alvarez. So I think that's the only possible downside of this fight is that Eddie's like, man, I don't even want to get in a brawl with this kid. I'm just going to try to take him down, whether that's the best strategy or not. I think if anybody's going to really push it, I think it's going to be Eddie. And I wouldn't say that's like 100% going to happen, but it's in the back of my head as a fan who was in attendance for that fight against Anthony Pettis. It was not quite what I was expecting.
And that's going to be dangerous, to go that route, because I think not only will a win, get these guys in talk for a title shot, but they need an exciting performance, I think, to really get them in talks with getting a shot soon.
Absolutely. And speaking of getting a title shot, that could very well happen in the next matchup. Really, these next three matchups, including Alvarez and Gaethje, as Henry Cejudo takes on Sergio Pettis. Of course, we thought that this fight might not happen after Cejudo's home got caught with one of those wildfires, and he actually severely burned one of his foot. It also resulted in the loss of his gold medal for wrestling, which is very unfortunate. So Henry Cejudo's had to go through a lot just to have this fight happen, and he has looked really good since losing to Mighty Mouse Johnson. Now, I know he had that loss coupled in there with Joseph Benavidez, but we had the weird foul point thing. Remember, it was only a 3-round fight instead of a 5-round fight. But I think he has looked really well. And Sergio Pettis, I do like Sergio Pettis. I am a fan of his. But the one knock on him, and this was kind of the knock on Tisha Torres as well, they weren't putting people away. And when you're not putting people away, and you haven't really shown come close to that, it's hard for me to really get on your bandwagon to see that you're going to be a championship potential, because you got to have that ability to put people away. And so far in the UFC, he has not been able to do that. And that's one of the things I think that's a knock on him, because you got to be able to threaten people. If all you're doing is decisions can go wrong. Points can be taken away, and things you thought were doing well don't end up working out for you. But if you knock someone out, you submit them, you put any doubt of what was going to happen in that fight. And so far, he hasn't been able to do that. Yes, he's been successful, but when you get to guys like Henry Cejudo, who I think is one of the elite in any weight class, you can't just be satisfied with getting by. And like you were saying, you got to have Dana White likes knockouts. He likes finishes. He likes exciting fights. That's what gives him exciting, to give people an opportunity to fight for one of his championships. And I think just getting by Henry Cejudo, while, yeah, it's great, he may just get the shot just because he's in a division where luckily the champion's beaten everybody else, so he may be afforded that opportunity anyway. But that, to me, is the biggest X factor, is the fact he hasn't been putting people away. And I think Cejudo, with his incredible leaps and bounds in the stand-up department, is starting to do that too. He was a guy that was very similar early on in his career. He wasn't putting people away. He was just dominating with wrestling. But now I don't think that's the case anymore. And so that's what I want to really look at is, has Pettis evolved to a point where he can put guys away, or are we just going to see him kind of do what he's been doing and trying to use footwork and stuff? Because I'm not sure if that can work right now against Henry Cejudo.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, Cejudo's he's just evolved so much. And it's probably because he's gone in there and fought Demetrius Johnson, Joseph Benavidez, been able to learn from those, fighting those two, and just others in the division too. But his evolution, he just seems like he's really coming into his prime, to where I think this next shot at Demetrius Johnson, we will be able to see him perform at his prime, at his best. So, I mean, I know we're going to do predictions at the end, but I am favoring him a little bit more. I think, too, hearing both of them discuss stuff, they know that this is almost like a title eliminator, like we were saying. And I think, like you said, just the way that the division has been going, the way that they know that there's a TJ Dillashaw that's trying to go after Demetrius Johnson. A lot of people know on this card you have to, and just with the way that the sport's been going in 2017, like you said, Dana White fans, they like these big, exciting, standout performances. They've seen how someone like Darren Till can be talked about for the next 5 days after a great performance. So I feel like both of these guys are going to come out and try to really perform well and give a good performance. But I think Cejudo's just seems like he's more in his prime right now. So I'm favoring him slightly.
All right, next fight, co-main event, Alistair Overeem against Francis Ngannou, another fight that I think is a potential title eliminator as well. And I think unlike the other ones, this one truly is who's going to land first.
Yeah.
I honestly think that. It's just literally, these are two guys that are physical specimens. I mean, they're both 6'5". They both weigh over 250 pounds, and they have abs, which is incredible that you weigh that much and you have abs. These guys are absolute monsters, okay? When you look at, like, when you see guys in the UFC, you go, oh, that's a tough guy. But when you see these two guys walk in, you go, I would not want to be anywhere near these guys, if they were swinging. These are two guys I definitely wouldn't want to mess with. And I'm incredibly excited that we get to see here's a co-main event. I think it's a tremendous co-main event, and we get to see two of the best strikers, pound for pound in any division, just throw down. And the fact it is heavyweight, it's probably going to end very quickly and fairly violently, and I'm super excited for it.
Yeah, people can try and argue, okay, well, it's going to be, experience over the new up-and-coming guy, but I completely agree with you. I think it's just up in the air, whoever connects first. This is definitely a fight. Don't get up, stay and watch. I predicted ending in the first round.
I think so too. It's definitely going to be a first round type of fight. We'll get to pick it in just a minute. Main event, Aldo Holloway 2. Obviously changed from originally Frankie Edgar. In this main event, to me, the person that has to change the most is Jose Aldo. He's a guy that I think mentally is not quite there. I don't think the drive is quite as there, especially after that Conor loss. He's just hasn't quite been the same guy. I think in that Holloway fight, I think he just thought, if I just go full force at this kid, I can put him away early. I can do it for my hometown, and that proved to be very ineffective. Max Holloway completely, Muhammad Ali rope-a-doped him and came in the second, third round and used his incredible reach, speed, and just accumulation of strikes to put Aldo away in the third round. And not only was the Conor loss demoralizing, but I think losing in your hometown, a fight that was supposed to be kind of your return back to greatness, and really, in for lack of a better term, mollywopped by Max Holloway, I don't think does a lot for your confidence. A guy that already probably was lacking a little bit in that category. Now we enter the rematch. He gets a chance to prove himself again. And to me, he has to not be what he has been. And I think that's very hard to change. He's a guy that's always been the faster guy, the hard-hitting guy, the more electric guy. But that's not the case anymore. He's now in his 30s. He's not quite as fast as he was. He doesn't hit quite as hard. He doesn't take the punches quite as well. you know? And his conditioning has always kind of been in question, but now his conditioning definitely isn't quite what it was. And you take all that into consideration. It's like, can he somehow change and really push the pace with jiu-jitsu, with wrestling? We have never really seen him do that because he's never had to, even though he is a black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And I really think that's the only way you're going to beat Max Holloway is to make it an ugly fight. Go back and look at Max Holloway's fight against Jeremy Stephens. Jeremy Stephens is a really good striker, right? You would think, oh, he would have no problem striking with Max Holloway, right? Nope. Jeremy Stephens tried to straight up out wrestle Max Holloway, and it ended up being a really ugly fight that Max Holloway just kind of barely got out of. And even though that hasn't been Jose Aldo's career, that's what he has to do. Because if he does any semblance of what he did last time, he's going to lose. And he's going to get knocked out again, plain and simple.
Yeah, no, you make such a good point because, like you said, not that Jose Aldo, yes, he's slowing down, but I think out of any of these older veterans, I think that he's someone that still has a lot of potential to continue fighting and do well, but not when you have someone like Max Holloway as champion right now. He's just a new evolution of fighter, someone who's probably learned a lot from Jose Aldo, watching him over the years and growing up wanting to fight him. And yeah, like you said, I just think that if he goes in and tries to play that same game of the same type of fight that he did before, I don't see him being successful. The only thing that kind of intrigues me, and you know, again, we don't know how much truth there was in this. Jose Aldo did come out saying that he was injured in that last fight, so we're going to see a healthy Jose Aldo come out. But that's one thing I just want to tap on too. What's amazing about Conor McGregor is not only has he done so much, you know, just as an athlete in the sport, but he completely breaks down fighters. I mean, after losing to him, they just seem completely broken. And I think Jose Aldo is one of those fighters.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard, Aldo was trying to downplay it, saying, oh, there was never really a rivalry. That's him downplaying the fact that he's not as confident as it was. Yeah. We just had a comment from Lex saying, you know, Conor does these crazy things to make publicity, make money. And I would say, yeah, up until this point, it's been true. But right now, what is he making money off of? Is he making money off of beating guys in the bar? Is he making money off of being in court today? Is he making money off of getting in trouble with Mock Goddard? If anything, he's losing money. Because he's getting fined. He has to pay court fees. And if he's not fighting for the UFC or another organization, no money is coming in. People don't sponsor you when you don't fight.
You don't,
you know, the longer he doesn't
fight, nightmare.
The more those sponsorship deals go away. Because if you're not doing your job, you know, like look at Peyton Manning. When he was in the NFL, was he on commercials nonstop? Like, right?
So,
like,
right?
He was everywhere. But now his career's over. Do you see Peyton Manning commercials a lot? Not really. Do you see Brett Favre commercials a lot? Not really. You know what I mean? Like, as you age, you don't – yeah, you're still doing something. I'm not saying he can never get another sponsorship deal, but those big lucrative offers, they start going down the less and less you fight. And it's not saying the guy can't live off $100 million for the rest of life. He sure as heck should be. I mean, anyone should be able to live off $100 million for the next 50 years of his life. But right now, he's not doing anything to bring in money or bring in that type of money. And so eventually he's going to have to make a decision whether he wants way more money or if he's content with what he wants or content with what he has. And thanks for the comment, though, Lek. Any final thoughts on that, Caleb, before we go to picks?
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think that getting involved with the mob or being on the mob's bad side, bar fights, you know, slapping officials. I don't know what sponsors are going to be throwing themselves at you to try and have you be the face of their company when you're doing stuff like that. But yeah, so with the main event, you know, I think too, it's been hard though, because leading up to this and during press week and watching the embedded episodes, we did hear from Jose Aldo. He has this plan of trying to get his belt back and retiring as champion. There is something to that. I think when these guys have this momentum and this idea, this plan, you know, he might be in a better mental place, because I think that's kind of what we both kind of keep getting back at is, has he been humbled by those losses and kind of accepted that he's getting older and there's these new young guys coming in? But I think, like you said, I agree. He just needs to go in there and do something completely different, because Max Holloway is just a dominant champion and dominant fighter. There was something I saw that was cool, though. I believe he said the first time that he won the belt was in Detroit, he said. But I thought that this was the first pay-per-view.
No, I think he won the belt. No, he was. Shoot, I'm trying to think
Let
how
me look this
the
up because
featherweight
he had
division.
said
Yeah.
something on Embedded this morning. There's some
Oh,
attachment to
well, he
Detroit that he
has
has.
one of his jiu-jitsu coaches who I've done some training with, Ronaldo Candido, now lives in the Detroit area. So maybe that was a reference to that, but I don't remember him fighting here. I don't know if he was in the UFC even yet
It was
when
for,
the last time they were.
or maybe he met, or meant with WEC. He said something about one of the first times he's had gold put around his waist was at least close to Detroit or possibly in Detroit. We'll have to look into that.
Okay.
But I know he
All
has
right. Well,
sort of attachment to the city.
Yeah. Like I said, one of his good friends, Ronaldo Candido, lives there, and I know is going to be at the fight supporting him. So I'm sure that probably helped one of the reasons he, was coming here to fight. So, all right, let's get to picks though. Tisha Torres versus Michelle Waterson kicking off that pay-per-view main card, 5 versus 6 in the strawweight division. I actually do like both ladies, but I got to go with Tisha Torres. I think right now she's on the roll. I think that first finish is really starting to help her kind of get over the edge for me to really believe that she is an elite fighter. And I think this is her chance to prove it on a big stage kicking off the pay-per-view card. And so I'm going to take the Tiny Tornado in this one.
Okay. We're going to have our first disagreement here. I'm going to go with Michelle just because even though you make very valid points, I think she's on a run. I just think that Michelle's experience and then her momentum of wanting to get that rematch against Rose is going to pull out the win for her.
Yeah, this is a tough pick for me. I like both ladies. I've actually interviewed both ladies, so I'm tremendous fans of them both. So it's one of the few. It's very hard to pick, but all right. Let's get to the next matchup. Eddie Alvarez against Justin Gaethje. Probably gave my pick away, blushing over Justin Gaethje early on the broadcast. So of course I'm picking the human highlight reel in Justin Gaethje in this one.
I am as well. I see a future champion and very soon that happening very soon. But yeah, Justin Gaethje for sure. And I'm predicting this to be, I think, fight of the night.
I think that's a very again, your bets to be made. Fight of the night: Eddie Alvarez, Justin Gaethje, and Gordon Ryan winning EBI 14. We sign off that here on Beyond the Cage on MMA World. We sign off on those bets. But if you lose, don't come crying to us. We're just signing off on them. Henry Cejudo against Sergio Pettis at flyweight. I really do like Sergio Pettis again, but I'm not sure if he's ready to take that next jump into the elite. And I'm going to go with Henry Cejudo. I think this is a really big fight for him. And we talk about motivation. I think, what he had to go through and all the personal stuff aside from fighting, and now he can kind of just focus, get in the cage, do his job, put a lot of that stuff away. I think this is going to be actually a very liberating experience for Henry Cejudo, being able to kind of put all that stuff aside and just do what he loves to do and compete in martial arts. And so I'm going to go with the messenger, Henry Cejudo, in this one.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's just he's coming into his prime. He's evolved. I see a big win for him. And that'll be cool because then I'm sure we'll hear from him in the post-fight conference and just you see this probably relief on his face of, man, it's been a rough year, but, right here and now I'm in, title contention.
Alistair Overeem versus Francis Ngannou. I'm a fan of both guys. It's hard not to be a fan of both guys, but it's hard to say you're going with the young guy when he's 31 years old. But I'm going with the younger guy in Francis Ngannou. I just think it's his time, and I think Overeem. He has a punch. I mean, it's the heavyweight division. Everybody has a chance with one punch. So I'm not trying to put a knock on the former Strikeforce champion, but I feel like this is Ngannou's time, and I think he's primed for a championship opportunity, and I think this is what gets him here. So I'm going to go with the Predator in this one.
Yeah, this one's so up in the air to me that I'm really just going off of gut feelings, and I myself also am feeling that Ngannou's just going to come in and get that one. I think it's just time for him to start really building himself. Not that he's already built up his name, but just build within those rankings and get close to that title. I'm predicting a knockout for him.
Main event, Max Holloway against Jose Aldo for the second time. As much as I would like to see Jose Aldo kind of return to prominence because he's been such a mainstay in the UFC for a long time, I'm really excited for what Max Holloway's been able to do over the last couple of years. I think he's won something like 11 fights in a row, some ridiculous amount. And I just think right now it's his time to dominate this division. He has just such a complete game, and just the way he fought in their first matchup, it proves that this is not just some kid that's extremely athletic. He's also proving he's a very smart individual as well in this sport. And adding that already being a scary fighter, adding that strategic value to his game, I think is even going to make it better. And so I think we're going to see Max Holloway win the rematch and make his first successful title defense here in Detroit.
I predict the same thing. He seems so comfortable and just is taking on this championship role. I see him reigning for a very long time. So unfortunately for Jose Aldo, I hope that we at least get to see a great performance out of both guys, but I am predicting that it'll be and still champion Max Holloway.
All right. She is Kayla Beatty. You can follow her on Twitter at fangirl_MMA. I am your host, Jim Graham. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Graham. And of course, like the page right here if you haven't done so already. MMA World. Thanks to everybody for watching this week. Hopefully we'll be back next week breaking this down and doing all that good stuff and talk about all the other fights that are happening next week. I think there's another Bellator fight and another UFC fight next week too, as the hits keep coming here in the holiday season here for 2017. So any final thoughts, Kayla, before we end the broadcast?
I'm just really excited for all these fights. I'm going to tune in to EBI and Glory, especially after the performances that you're talking about coming up. It was great to be on the show and talk fights with you again, Jim. I hope we get to do it soon.
Absolutely. All right, that's Kay Bailey, everybody. And once again, I'm your host, Jim. Thank you for watching the program. We appreciate it. Please like, share it, like MMA World on Facebook, and thanks for tuning in. And we'll be back again next week as well. So for Kayla Beatty, I am Jim Graham. Thanks for tuning in here to Beyond the Cage on MMA World. Goodbye, everybody.